quickly approaching, and Maryland voters will have a say in more than just who will take office. From shrinking the city council,
fewer cooks in the kitchen, you can actually feed somebody,
to expanding the county council.
It's about diversity, it's about population size, and it's about making sure that our council looks like the population that we're charged with representing.
And controversy over a proposed constitutional amendment surrounding reproductive rights.
Now, I'm not a legal expert, but I think that's the Mack truck equivalent of an exception that tries to define this term.
I'm going in depth on this year's ballot questions to make sure you're informed when you're ready to fill out your ballot. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Fox 45 News in Depth. I'm Mackenzie Frost. With Election Day less than 3 weeks away, we're breaking down some of the questions you'll see on your ballot. 8 local questions and 1 statewide question will appear on Baltimore City ballots. Voters will have a say in a number of charter amendments and bond issues, ranging from how City Council operates to how it's able to spend your tax dollars. Historically, Baltimore City voters nearly always approve ballot questions. According to our media partners at the Baltimore Sun, more than 100 questions have appeared on Baltimore ballots over the past 2 decades, and only 1 has failed. That's why it's important to know what you're voting for or against. Questions can appear on the ballot if they're approved by City Council or if they're citizen initiated, meaning anyone can propose a ballot question if they collect at least 10,000 signatures from registered voters. On this year's city ballot, only question H is citizen initiated. It asks voters whether they want to shrink the size of City Council from 14 members to 8, plus the City Council president. Fox 45's Jeff Abel explains.
At City Hall,
I have been working in this field for 30 years.
Mr. Marks.
I am the one.
Mr. Marks.
there are 15 council members.
And I want to know what it is that you guys are doing.
And 15 council voices.
These basic questions need to be answered.
All of them demanding to be heard.
I am off and I'm tired.
But the volume at City Hall could soon be coming down. If voters approve a ballot question in November, the council's 14 members, who are all elected from council districts, will shrink to 8 members.
You know, fewer cooks in the kitchen, you can actually feed somebody, right?
Giovanni Patterson led a petition drive to reduce the size of city government.
Our efforts are really just to, increase efficiency, save taxpayer money, and make city council more in line what we're seeing with our population.
In fact, when compared to cities of comparable size, Baltimore's 15-member city council is one of the largest in the country. Washington and Boston have 13 members on their councils. Detroit and Sacramento have 9. Portland, Oregon has a 5-member city council. Even Los Angeles has the same number of council members as the city of Baltimore, but its population is 6 times greater.
Baltimore does seem to have more than is typical for its population.
Walter Olson is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and has long studied the size and effectiveness of city councils.
When they get too big, it becomes talk all the time.
Olson says larger city councils are often more expensive, less decisive, and usually more political. A smaller council means members would likely represent a larger number of constituents. Those in favor of keeping the council large predict the savings of a smaller council would be minimal, but proponents seem convinced the impact will be felt and heard.
We will keep.
You're not from here, sir.
In so many ways.
You're not from here. You don't even know.
Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Now, Sinclair Executive Chairman and Baltimore Sun owner David Smith is funding Question H. As Jeff mentioned, supporters of the ballot measure say it would save City Council money, but it's not clear how much. The city's total budget for fiscal year 2025 is around $4.2 billion. Only $10.6 million of that is allocated to City Council, just 0.3% of the city's total budget. Critics argue any money it might save would be spent on growing staff needs for remaining council members.
When it comes to anything that involves their day-to-day quality of life, we are who they turn to. And so if you reduce the size of the council, it would simply just require us to increase the amount of staff that we have.
Fox 45 has spent the past few months asking residents what they think about shrinking the city council. Opinions were mixed, but many said they'd like to see a shakeup at City Hall.
I wouldn't say that we're over-governed.
I would just say we probably need to diversify the representation, though, so that we can get a voice from all parts of the city.
Is city government working?
I wouldn't say that city government isn't working, but who's it working for in the betterment? That would be the better question.
3 other charter amendments will also appear on the ballot this November. Question E concerns whether the city should take control of the city police department. Back in 2022, city residents voted to give control of the police department back to the city after more than a century of state control. If voters approve this year's charter amendment, it would specifically establish city police as, quote, an agency of the mayor and city council of Baltimore, which supporters say is crucial to give Baltimore City the same power over its police department as nearly every other city in the country.
It's really, really important for us to hold the police department accountable and to have more than oversight authority over the police department. Although it is a city agency today, the city council does not have the technical ability to write laws that govern the police department. What question E will do is formally outline the responsibilities of the police department and strike some critical language that limits the city council from writing laws that govern the police department.
Question F asks voters about redevelopment plans for Harbor Place. MCB Real Estate is planning a $900 million project to replace Inner Harbor pavilions with 4 mixed-use buildings, adding apartments, offices, and green space. The Maryland Supreme Court ruled this month the question will appear on the ballot and the votes will count after an Anne Arundel County judge struck it down for confusing wording. Earlier this year, attorney Thuru Vignaraja, at the time running as a Democratic candidate for mayor, spearheaded the petition that led the lower court's original ruling.
This was a question that was trying to take the heart of our city, the Inner Harbor Park, and literally scalpel out a part of the park and hand it over to private developers so they could construct luxury towers and parking garages.
Now that the state's highest court has ruled votes will count, some residents say they're still worried the project could make Harbor Place less accessible to the public. But the project's developer says those concerns are unfounded.
The whole purpose of what we're doing here is designing a place that's for Baltimore. It's for everyone. I think there is this narrative out there that this is for the elite, and it's simply not true. When you actually look at the designs, you will see there's tons of public space. There's more public space after this plan than before the plan.
Baltimore City Council has also approved a proposed charter amendment to create a reparations fund. That will appear as question G on your ballot. This November, it's expected to cost millions of dollars funded by the state. But once that state money runs out, taxpayers might end up footing the bill. The City Council passed the measure almost unanimously, but not everyone is on board with the plan. Baltimore City's Office of Equity and Civil Rights, along with the city's finance department, have both expressed concerns over the cost. Taxpayer watchdog David Williams says the measure could cost taxpayers millions of dollars in the coming years.
The city is going to be responsible for spending this money, even though the money may run out from the state. When you have city agencies telling you not to set up this fund and for this charter amendment not to go through, that should be a huge red flag to the citizens and taxpayers of Baltimore City.
Now, along with the proposed charter amendments, you'll also be able to vote on 4 bond issues this election, which allow voters to authorize bonds the city can take out for local spending proposals. Question A would allow up to $20 million in bond revenue for Mayor Brandon Scott and the City Council's affordable housing program. Question B would authorize the mayor and city council to borrow up to $55 million for city school improvements and creating new schools. Question C would allow up to $50 million in bonds for the mayor and the city council's economic development programs, including developing land and public spaces, establishing loans and grants for businesses, and home ownership and incentives. Question D would authorize up to $125 million in bond revenue for this mayor and the city council to construct and renovate city property like roads, bridges, city buildings, police, and fire stations. Still to come, we'll take a closer look at some of the ballot questions in Baltimore County. I'm sitting down with the county inspector general to talk about question B and what it could mean for her office. And as we head to break, let's take a look at some of today's top headlines.
Howard County Police announcing a second juvenile suspect is now behind bars, charged with first-degree murder and being held without bond. Now, this, of course, follows the arrest made earlier this week at Howard High School. The two are charged in connection to the murder of 26-year-old Kendrick McClellan, whose body was found in a vehicle parked behind an office building in Columbia.
So it's still under investigation. I can tell you that the victim and the suspects were known to each other, but we're still working on that.
At an early morning breakfast in Baltimore County, Lutherville Station was front and center.
We are not looking to the 1950s, the way some folks in Old Lutherville may be doing.
Those 560 apartments Renbaum is proposing now is 100 more apartments than what was initially announced. But because of a new state law that will go into effect, allowing for high-density developments near transit hubs, it could move forward.
In Baltimore County, residents will vote this November on a referendum to expand the county council. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker breaks down the ballot measure.
The Baltimore County Council is looking to expand from 7 members to 9.
Our population has tripled, almost tripled to 850,000, and we still have 7 council members. And so it really is time for Baltimore County to grow and create opportunity, and this is really important, opportunity for women and minorities to enter elected office here in Baltimore County.
The council structure was last established in 1956 and is currently made up of 7 men. Council members say their makeup should match the county's growth and create more opportunity.
It's about diversity, it's about population size, and it's about making sure that our council looks like the population that we're charged with representing.
The referendum, which will be on the ballot for voters to decide come November, also makes the council members full-time and creates changes to the school board.
It could use a few tweaks.
But the biggest source of contention among council members is this new map, drawn by some council members, dividing the county into 9 new districts.
The way in which we did it, it just stinks of backroom politics that I feel like the public's tired of.
I'm okay with expanding the council, but I'm not in support of this ballot measure. Only because the ballot measure contains a map that was not produced in the open and transparent manner as outlined in the county charter.
The map did not go through the typical process of redistricting.
The problem with the map is that the charter is pretty clear when it comes to redistricting, and that there will be a commission, that a map shall be produced from that commission, and the council shall take up the map that's been produced by that commission. What it doesn't state is what to do in the situation that you have expanded the council in between 2 censuses.
11 state representatives even signed this letter sent from the Maryland ACLU demanding to remove the map and threatening legal action. And Councilman Patrick Young introduced legislation to strike the map from the referendum, but it didn't pass.
I was concerned there was no real public input in the system, in the process that was followed to draw the map.
Councilman Wade Catch, however, did introduce a successful amendment that says if expansion happens, a commission indicated by the charter will be used, meaning there will be a chance for public feedback, and the map is subject to change before the end of next year.
If we don't do anything, we will be parked in front of 1956, our emergency brake up, and we're not going anywhere.
But for Councilman Julian Jones, it's still not enough.
I would urge people not to vote for the ballot initiative because there's a lot more that's going to happen if that passes.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Now, Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski says he supports the expansion, but says if voters do approve it, he wants to strongly encourage council members to provide a more responsive, equitable, and inclusive map drawing process. Baltimore County residents will also have the opportunity to vote on Question B, which would establish the Office of Inspector General in the Baltimore County Charter. A yes vote would set specific qualifications for the position, give the IG subpoena power, and give the IG's office its own budget. Baltimore County Inspector General Kelly Madigan says the measure is important to help her office hold government accountable.
It's just another way to guarantee the existence of an Inspector General's office. The offices are not popular because the mission is to root out fraud, waste, and abuse.
Inspector General Madigan joins us in studio now. Thank you so much for joining here. Why do you think it's important to amend the charter to include the OIG when it already exists from previous statute?
Thanks, Mackenzie, so much for having me. Adding the Office of the Inspector General to the charter is important for three different reasons. First and foremost, it's a best practice. It's consistent with other OIG offices throughout the country. It ensures independence from political interference. If an agency is included in the charter, the only substantive changes that can occur to that agency are through the will of the people, i.e. the voters and citizens of Baltimore County. The second reason why it's important is it was supported both by the Blue Ribbon Commission as a recommendation when they studied the office. It was supported by the county executive and the county council to include on the ballot initiative. So it doesn't really do anything different. It just provides more consistency and independence and treats the OIG similar to other Baltimore County agencies.
And you mentioned that best practices, the Blue Ribbon Commission suggested this and recommended this. Other jurisdictions with offices of inspector generals, they have it in the charter like this proposal would put it as well, correct?
Absolutely. And both Baltimore City and Montgomery County's offices are both in enabling statutes as well as the charter.
And you mentioned that it wouldn't really change the function of the office overall, but when it comes to the budget, why is it important to have a dedicated funding stream for an OIG in case we have another elected leader come in and decide they don't want an inspector general to have any budget at all?
Well, it's really not about the budget. It's about adding the office to the charter, which ensures that it ensures the absence of political interference, that bills can't be passed by either the executive branch or the legislative branch to change any aspect of the office, whether that's budget, whether that's subpoena power, any tweaks. By adding it to the charter, those changes would have to occur in an election and would have to be voted on by the citizens of Baltimore County.
And you mentioned as well that as it stands right now, it doesn't appear as if anyone is vocally opposed to this charter amendment. Are you feeling confident that this will pass heading into the last stretch of election season?
Oh, I hope that the citizens of Baltimore County will vote for the amendment. It certainly would be consistent with best practices. The office is one tasked with oversight, and so much we work on behalf of the citizens of Baltimore County to protect their tax dollars. So I would urge and hope that all of the citizens would vote for this initiative, which both the county executive and county council support.
And if people at home are looking at their ballot and they're filling this out at home, or they're preparing to head into the polls, and they look at this and they say, wait, what does an inspector general actually do? Can you give us just a brief overview of the role and responsibility of you and your office?
Sure. So first of all, if they have any questions, they can certainly call the office, 410-887-6500. But every federal agency has an IG. IGs provide oversight. So our office provides oversight for Baltimore County government, Baltimore County monies, Baltimore County employees, and Baltimore County vendors. We are tasked with making Baltimore County more efficient by rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse, and looking for ways to improve efficiency, accountability, and integrity within Baltimore County government.
Baltimore County Inspector General Kelly Madigan, thanks so much for joining us in studio, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Mackenzie, thanks so much for having me with the opportunity to talk about this important charter amendment.
After the break, reproductive rights also on the ballot this election season, what you need to know about this year's state question, and a potential amendment to Maryland's Constitution. Maryland voters are filling out their ballots now, and one of the questions they will face is whether to enshrine access to reproductive health care in the state's constitution. Supporters say this will add another layer of protection for women's rights to an abortion. Critics, who are urging people to vote against this proposal, argue it could open the door to other things. When you head to the polls in Maryland or decide to fill out your ballot at home, you'll see this. Question 1, the only statewide ballot question posed to voters. Question 1 seeks to change Maryland's constitution, calling to, quote, confirm an individual's fundamental right to reproductive freedom. It goes on to say, including but not limited to someone's ability to decide to prevent, continue, or end the individual's pregnancy. And unless there's a compelling state interest, the government cannot impact that right. No mention of the word abortion, but supporters of the effort say that's the point. Maryland Reproductive Freedom, a group backing the ballot question, says even though the right to an abortion is in state law, because it's not in the Maryland Constitution, the protections are not guaranteed. Current law, passed in 1991, allows abortions until a fetus reaches viability, generally considered to be about 24 weeks. Despite multiple interview requests from Fox 45 News, the group did not get back to us. But in this newly launched digital ad,
and now it's our time.
The group says voting yes is about protecting freedom.
Freedom to make decisions for our health and our families.
There are a number of other reasons why we're opposed to it as well.
Jeffrey Trimbath, president of the Maryland Family Institute, says the ballot language is vague, and he's concerned about the doors it could open if passed.
There's this unbelievable phrase that tries to define it in the actual language that begins with including but not limited to. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but I think that's the Mack truck equivalent of an exception that tries to define this term.
Trimbath says the constitutional amendment proposal could restrict parental control over their children's health care, including allowing them to seek gender-affirming care without their consent or knowledge.
I would invite any person, whether you are pro-choice, pro-life on abortion, whether you're pro-transgender rights or anti-transgender rights, whatever, I would invite all Marylanders to look at the language of the amendment itself and try to figure out what it means. Just take a look at it, as I've explained it here to you. Look at it on a piece of paper. And what we think it means is, quite apart from any issue of abortion or transgenderism, we think it actually undermines parental rights because of that subject of the amendment.
Katie Curran-O'Malley, CEO of the Women's Law Center of Maryland and retired Baltimore City District Court judge, told our media partners at the Baltimore Sun, quote, "None of that is true," adding the constitutional amendment has nothing to do with sexual transition, and having an abortion and being a transgender person are two different things. State law now allows minors to seek and consent to medical treatment or advice relating to sexually transmitted infections, substance abuse, contraception, and pregnancy. Kids under 16 in Maryland cannot consent to medication to treat mental health disorders. Question 1 does not mention gender-affirming care, and it does not seek to change parental medical consent or abortion laws. Now, early voting in Maryland begins next Thursday, October 24th, and runs through Thursday, October 31st. Election Day, mark your calendars, Tuesday, November 5th. And if you're voting by mail, you must postmark and drop your ballot off by 8 p.m. on Election Day. That's all for this week's edition of Fox 45 News In Depth. I'm Mackenzie Frost. Mary?
Thank you, Mackenzie. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 6, the controversial Lutherville Station redevelopment project might be moving forward thanks to a new state law, why some community members are still opposed to the project. And a second juvenile arrested in connection to a deadly shooting in Columbia, why residents are sounding the alarm.